Looks like we are rolling. What's up, guys? It's Thomas here. I hope you're doing great. Today I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive on all things distortion. Overdrives, boosting, distortions. Where do you start with all this stuff? So that's what we're going to get into. So no matter if you're trying to get the perfect heavy rhythm tone or something a little bit more loose, spongy, all about the feels and vibes, or maybe you want to dial in an awesome lead tone. There's so many different ways that you can approach distortion and overdrive, and sometimes, well, actually a lot of the time, it's not just the case of going to the gain and cranking it up and hoping for the best. There's science to the madness. So hey, let's dive right in and get to the drives. I don't know. There's no edits in this video, so yeah. Anyway, oh, by the way, we're going to use Nunchuk, but more importantly, I've made a very specific preset for you guys so you can actually follow along if you own Nunchuk. Nunchuk, if you're not familiar with it, is it's such a great product. It's our hot take on a JCM 800 with a lot of mods, a load of really fun pre and post effects. More on that later. But yeah, if you want to get this preset, I'll leave the link to our Discord where I'll put this preset there for you. So we're going to start off with a vintage channel. And we're going to make our way to different types of scenarios, you know, heavier, full force tones, shred tones, and more chilled tones. So I really like the vintage channel because it's very, it has a kind of foot in both camps. It can do really aggressive, heavy tones, but also it's just really vibey, you know, so if you're like, you want that spongy kind of feel. Just really, really great. Okay, so listen, we've got that tone there and we're like, okay, cool. I like that, but in my track, it's a little bit too woolly. I'm getting too much of that kind of... Now, we can look at tightening it up with a switch. That can definitely help. Or we could go in and maybe look for that note that's just kind of causing that little bit of woolliness in the track, you know? I'm thinking like we've got a drummer and a bass player going and we don't want to take up too much energy in that upper bass frequency. Right away, it's like that 125, 160. More like 125. Done. Job fixed. So speaker voice edit comes through really, really great for just finding those kind of harmonic frequencies in your riffs. Now we can really focus on just delivering the riff. And it only takes sometimes just a couple of dB. So often it's not like, let's go, we found the killer frequency. Less is more sometimes. And often what you can do is the surrounding frequencies, if you want to kind of boost it up a little bit, we can kind of add some reinforcement to the low end if you're having to scoop out too much. But for now, I'm just kind of happy with that little cut that we made. So, hey, we're like, all right, that's great, but I want a little bit more gain. So let's think about different types of distortion. Like, if you have an overdrive pedal that you really crank the output but have the drive really, really low, which a lot of people have done over the years. A lot of big guitarists have done that. That's one type of drive. But then if you go the other way and you kind of back down the volume and crank up the gain, you're really clipping and sort of killing the dynamic range, but it gives you this kind of softer, spongy tone. Great for leads, great for that kind of like the chuggy riffs, but it's a bit saggy, it's a bit kind of spongy. You know, which way you want to go is up to you. I love both, and I especially like doubling up on it. I like using the neck position with like those saggy drives. It's just so nice to play. So let's dive back in and kind of experiment with that a little bit. So let's start with the Green Mamba, shall we? Now, one little tip I want to give you on the drives on Nunchuk and many of our other products is if you double click on any of the knobs, if they're like set like this and like that, just double click on them and that will take you back to a very neutral factory preset. So for example, let's say your Storm drive was all crazy like that from a preset. And you're like, well, that's a bit fiery. Double click on any of the knobs and they will go back to a point where you turn it on and off. And it's much more neutral sounding. And it's sometimes just an easier starting point, right? So let's try with the drive way down. It's a little bit more feisty when you kind of crank the tone and the volume. Let's try the other way. Very different experience depending on what you want. Now, another thing that I would take into consideration when you're dialing in rhythm and lead tones and whatnot is how much gain does the actual amp have, right? Because if you think about it right here, that's it's like a mid-gain type of tone that we have. So in this instance, we could also consider in just pulling some of the gain out of the amp. Now we're getting more flavor from the Green Mamba, and that's always really interesting because if you think about it, like where the saturation, where the gain kicks in, it's like if we have a lot of gain on the amp and then the drive is very limited as to what it can do. It can maybe do a little bit of tone shaping and whatnot on the front end, but it's always going to be like this kind of thing. How much flavor do we get from the gain in the amp versus the pedal? And if you reduce the gain down in the amplifier, then we can really play with different amounts of output from the Green Mamba in this case, or different amounts of drive with less outputs and less output. And all of that makes for quite a different feel on your fingers. So definitely worth experimenting with that. So let's try a different channel. Let's move on to, say, the HotRod channel. A little bit less gain overall, a little bit more mid-focus for... If you're really hitting those big chords, HotRod's great for that. You know, it gives you great cut in the mix. You hear the clarity. Like when I hear HotRod, I want a little bit of spring plate to go with it. Now bear in mind with Nunchuk we can also boost the amp, so although HotRod is a little bit less gainy overall, as we add the boost and even jump. Now we can hear that we've stacked boost and jump on top of each other, two different boost circuits if you like. It's starting to get pretty overwhelming. You know, that might be great on lead stuff. Perfect, absolutely amazing. But like if your track is going to be like, it's not going to work so much. So that's where we need to just maybe pull some of that gain out, perhaps think about tightening it up with a switch. And then if you think, oh, that's still not tight enough, well, let's turn the tight off and let's dive over to Storm Drive. So, high cut, low cut, this is what we have here. We have two different types of filters. And what we want to do with Storm Drive is kind of maybe adjust just the bottom end, the bass, because it's that woolliness from the pickups and the guitar, all that output. That's, first of all, that's going to cause the overwhelming sort of sound, right? So okay, so we can hear with a lot of cut that we're starting to get some pick attack, but we've lost a lot of bottom end. So now it's about really dialing it in. Now, it's a little bit like, it's very difficult to find that balance. So, all right, let's turn Storm Drive off. There's quite a lot of gain already, right? So like, let's pull the boost off now. Bit more of a mid gain. Okay, that's a better starting point for Storm Drive. It means we can push more of that flavor from Storm Drive. Now, you know, we put on wide. Even though we're on the Hot Rod channel, we can now make it kind of get a bit more aggressive. Okay. Let's pull a little bit more gain out of the amp. So now it's starting to chug, but because we're cutting so much of the bass on the front end, whilst it's barking, we are losing a little bit of that meatiness. And this is where we could use something like shape EQ and just... And just with a little bit of bass at 125, a little bit of 250, a little bit of brightness. Now we can bring some of those frequencies back very easily. So that's another way that you can think about sort of distortion design, if you like. Yes, I need it super, super tight, but the downside of that is going to be that we'll lose some of the bass. We can bring that in so many different ways with all of our plugins now. Well, Nutcracker, Nunchuk, and onwards here. You have Shape EQ, the Mastering EQ, great for just reintroducing some of those broader frequencies. And of course, with Speaker Voice Edit, we have full control to also bring some of those frequencies or all of those frequencies in and out of your sound as you desire. Now, from an actual channel perspective, Hot Rod is, I would say, perfectly at home with those mid gains. There's a lot of preset that really showcase it for shred and lead tones, but if you want to like hit it hard and really kind of have that pick attack, this is where the Modern channel really kind of shines on Nunchuk. It'll give you that kind of aggressive pick attack without doing anything. Let's try it with tight. Let's bring the gate in. Let's go more aggressive with the gate and distortion. So right there, I think we're just getting a bit too much gain from the amp. We can tighten that up further. Yeah, let's try that with, we'll turn the tight switch off and really try and get that nice balance with Storm Drive and the Modern channel. Oh, I quite like it with tight on. So we're kind of cutting the bass at 2 points, if you think about it. With the tight switch on, it's effectively removing a little bit of the low end bump that hits the circuitry of the amp. And with Storm Drive, we're also shaping the low end, so it's like double filtering. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, but in this case, I kind of like that. But there's something in the high frequencies that I want to adjust, and this is where this filter comes in, because this solely removes the top end. So for example, I'm going to really exaggerate it now with a split position here on the Fishman pickup. Let's turn the gate completely off. You hear? You're not going to hear the bass, adjustment so much, but that top end, yeah. So if I go back to my normal humbucker, we can smoothen that out a little bit, bring the gate back on. Now we can start to really crank that gain until it feels just like it's perfect. Make it wide. Let's get that EQ to help with the sort of frequencies that we've removed. That type of tone would work great with leads. Oh, that was really bad. Yeah, that really works great for rhythm and lead tones. So that's using the Modern channel with a little bit of reverb and delay added. We'll turn this stuff back off now. And Storm Drive kind of with some heavy filtering on the bass and a little bit of filtering on the top end, just to remove some of those harsher high frequencies as it goes into the amp. Oh yeah, that works great. So let's turn off Storm Drive and tight here, and wide for that matter. It just sounds really, really nice to play. But let's try something a little bit wilder. Metal Charlie, I think this is probably the most difficult pedal to master, and it's like a full frequency assault on the amplifier. So the amp itself, it's like getting all these upper frequencies, high harmonic distortions thrown at it, and your amp can behave in all kinds of weird and wonderful ways. Let's have a listen to exactly that. So again, I've double clicked all of the default positions on the knobs. And the first thing that we hear when Metal Charlie's on is almost that little bit of fuzz-like quality. And as I turn the drive up, you hear all sorts of anger really coming out of him. He's a very angry little, I would say bastard, yeah, but yeah, he's an angry little bugger. Yeah, so I think with Metal Charlie, it works very well if you start to cut some of those bass frequencies out, because he's just such a wild lad, right? And now you hear, as I really push the treble, those roaring frequencies of the amp. It's almost like the amp is getting a bit angry that we're smashing it with so many unusual frequencies, because Metal Charlie is he's a wild boy. But there's a sweet spot just behind that chaos. Let's say we want to tighten that up a little bit further. Maybe a little bit less gain overall, just so we can riff a bit more. There we go, that's working. Get wide on here. Now with an octaver here. Guitar's gone a little bit out of tune there. But Metal Charlie, I think, is just, it's got this certain feel on your fingers when you're playing those big kind of chords or octaves. And it's kind of very, very spongy, so it's not going to be like the tightest type of drive pedal. That's more Storm and maybe Green Mamba. But if you want those kind of real ring out chords with a bit of flair, bit of style, pretty cool. And if you push it extreme, I wonder if we just go real tight on the gate, wide off. Just wild, so really fun. Anyway, there's one more type of drive that I want to show you here, and that's how to dial in a drive pedal using a clean amp. What's really cool about Nunchuk is it actually is a fantastic platform for drive pedals. So if you actually have physical drive pedals that you used to use, I have a bunch, and we were testing all types of drives and distortion pedals with Nunchuk in this kind of scenario. And ultimately that's what led us to the decision of including the Kebamp. So when it comes to being a platform amp, what I mean by that is like an amplifier that takes drive pedals really well. You could take like a classic overdrive or a modern overdrive and plug it into many different amplifiers and it'll sound horrible. It'll just sound like so uninspiring that you just wouldn't want to use it. But I think when you get an amplifier and you kind of give it a little bit of rough edge, now we've got a little bit of the room ambience I can hear there. But we could take that off completely. And we've got a nice starting point. In fact, without doing very much, I mean, we could add more. I think right about there actually works very well. Now you hear how much influence the gain on the amp actually has. So as I clean that amp up from the sort of rough edge clean to more of a traditional clean, we get a different sort of drive pedal. It sounds totally different. Less tight, but you get more of the sound of Kebamp, and that's kind of interesting. So what this teaches you is, like, imagine how many possibilities we have with like 4 distinctive channels, all these EQ, all these switches, all these pedals, and all the different configurations, and then you have 20 different speakers starting points. We haven't even touched the filters or the low and high filters, EQs, and then speaker voice edits. So of course there's hundreds of presets where all the stuff is perfectly dialed in. But when you start to get your head around it, and then you factor in, like, you know, hey, we could use some compression before the drive, and that might tame some of the frequencies even more. Nunchuk is just very, very deep. It's really, really great for sound design and just sounds that make you want to play. So I'm going to just dial back this guy here, and I'm going to go back to the hot mode. There's 3 modes on Nunchuk Kebamp. It's sheesh, for, you know, your sort of Wednesday, Thursday night kebab, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you know, maybe by the weekend you want something real spicy, right? Now, like I said, it's... Oh, we have a delivery. Delivery. There's a delivery. And resume. Waiting for some camera accessories. Very important, because I'm working on an office shooting location, and yeah, some of those camera adapters just make pulling cameras off so much easier. So I ran down the stairs, and I immediately, because I've been sat here for like 20 minutes, I got to the first step and my leg just went to jelly, and it felt like it was filled with sand, pins and needles as it's called. And yeah, that was awful. But got the delivery, so we're good there. Yeah, so let's finish up with Kebamp here and just really play with amplifier sort of breakup, not distortion, because we want to use Kebamp. Kebamp, if you're not familiar with it, is basically an amplifier in a pedal. So it can work as a sort of a drive pedal on a clean channel like we're using it now. You could back it way down and just turn the drive out of it, take the drive out of it, and really reset it, and use it with, say, use it as a sort of boost type of pedal, but I think it particularly shines as a amplifier in a pedal, as it's intended to be. So that means it works best with the clean channel. Wow, that's really cool. Let's try a little bit of tweak on the EQ. And what's really cool about this is, because the amplifier is cleaned up a lot, you get those subtle harmonics of the EQ coming through, because everything in this amplifier is like interactive. You know, you adjust the EQ and it kind of affects a different tube stage and whatnot. So you almost hear how the EQ is actually affecting how much gain is coming out of the amplifier. Now, if you're really, really happy with that, we could dive over to the final EQs, be it mastering EQ or shape EQ. We could do some very gentle scooping. But like if I wanted to make that a real aggressive kind of heavy tone, I think a little bit more shaping on the mids. And when you're shaping the mids, it's always a sort of balance between how much bark do you want to hear, how much pick. Do you want to hear versus the scoop? Now I'm hearing there's a bit bass that I want to just kind of dial back a tad. Not much. Now let's just push the drive a bit. There we go, got on the second and third. You get the idea, right? Yeah, it's something that I love playing around with a lot, like drives and just how it makes you feel as a guitar player, you know, just like the difference between spongy, tight, somewhere in the middle, what kind of overtones do we bring out, all of that stuff. So I know it's a little bit of a long video, so this is probably going to appeal to just a very, well, I don't know. You let me know. Do you like this video? Have you made it 33 minutes to the very end? If you have, well done you. Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives on very specific parts of tones and plugins, then let me know. And also, remember the preset that I used for all of these tones as the starting point, I'll leave on Discord. I'll leave the link down so you can come and chat with us over there as well. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here hopefully real soon. All right, take care, guys. Cheers. Goodbye. My mouse has disappeared. Okay, now we're good. All right, cheers, bye.